Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and today's review is the SMSL VMV D1se digital to analog converter. Now that is an alphabet soup of a name, but this is a $720 fully balanced ESS chip-based Delta Sigma DAC. This was a kind loan from Apos Audio, so the link that you will see to buy this from Apos Audio in the description below will be an affiliate link, so you can help out the channel if you like this review and like this product. If you buy using that link, I will get a few bucks back. But outside of that, Apos has made no attempts to influence my opinion on this piece in any way, so everything you're about to hear are my thoughts and my thoughts alone. And yeah, so we will go ahead and get into shameless self-promotion, and we'll come right back on the other side and dive into the review of the alphabet soup of a name SMSL VMV D1se digital to analog converter. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Please remember to hit that like button, and if you haven't, please subscribe. Also, I have a Patreon set up so that you can help support me on a monthly basis, and I've set up a PayPal donation so that you can help me out in that way too if a monthly subscription does not make sense for you. Links for all of that, including the benefits, in the description below. Please check those out. All right, on with the show. If you'll indulge me for just a second here, allow me to begin this review with just a sigh of relief. And the reason for that is, in some sense, finally we have a DAC from one of those Chinese companies that has primarily been about chasing measurements over their existence. Okay, or at least chasing measurement excellence has been one of the primary features of their brand, okay? And I would put SMSL into that category. We finally have a product from them that has measurement excellence, because this does measure beautifully. And I will link to a couple of websites, like Golden Sound did a full measurement suite on this thing, and it measures excellently, but it also sounds good. Like, it really sounds good. When I have gotten products like this one in the past, some of them have been SMSLs, some of them, or most of them, have been like toppings and all of that. But what you get is those Chinese companies that one of their primary goals and one of their primary reasons for existence, it seems, is just to push the envelope on how well their products can measure on an audio precision measurement rig. And they have gotten really, really good at that. But I have consistently found them to be lacking in sound. And then I get them in for review, and I sit down and I listen to them, and they're just dull, and they are flat, and they are lifeless, and they don't image very well, they don't separate very well. They sometimes have had very squelched dynamics, and like just kind of sound overly blended together and stuck in the mud. And I've just felt like a broken record on those things, and just like been sometimes being out on a limb in that regard, because I recognize they measure great, but when I put it on music and listen to music on them, they just are not enjoyable in any way. Okay, at least not to these ears. But this time, finally, okay, cat out of the bag early on in this review, finally, there's one of these that I legitimately enjoy listening to. So, with that in mind, let's dive into the review here. Okay, so VMV D1se, I get $720 US. It is built around a ESS 9038 Pro DAC chip. It decodes and plays back just about everything two-channel audio. So if you thought the name was an alphabet soup, all of the things that it can decode makes that even more true, because we get PCM decoding up to 32-bit 768 kilohertz. We get DSD up to 512. MQA is in here. There is Bluetooth 5.0 in this thing. It has an XMOS processing chip in it, and just all kinds of stuff, okay, going on in there. All right, it also is just built in SML's kind of like almost standard size chassis now. It's all aluminum. It's got some nice heft to it. It is a well-built unit. Yeah, and all that. I think it comes in at just a little bit over 3.5 pounds, if I remember right, which for a unit this size is fairly solid. I mean, it's very solid when you pick it up. It feels very nice and smooth and well built. It is a bit of a fingerprint and oil magnet because of the black finish on it, but you know, it can be cleaned off relatively easily there. Okay, so let's just go ahead and get a build complaint out of the way here real quick. These spike feet on the bottom, right? So these are here so that if you put this on a carpeted surface and it's not quite level, you can adjust them a little bit so it is level. And then it also helps with vibrations, reduces the amount of vibrations from the unit into the floor, which is what I would say if this was a speaker. Okay, but it's not a speaker, it's a DAC. It goes on a shelf. These feet, I mean, you can unscrew them and take them out. There are other sized options in the package for this, and you just, you know, screw right in and out. But I just do not understand these spiked feet. I don't. And so that is a feature on this that I really could live without on this unit. I don't, because like there's no ventilation holes or any heat sinking or anything like that underneath this. So I just do not know why they put those feet in there. They make the thing slide across the desk a little bit more and all of that sort of thing. So that would be probably my biggest chief complaint about this DAC, honestly. I have another one that comes up for ergonomic quirks here just a little bit, and then I have one that is a bit of a sonic drawback in a very specific instance, but it's common to DACs of this type, and so we'll get to all of that here in just a moment. But yeah, don't understand the spike feet. Okay, sure, let's continue on with the build and all of that sort of thing. So front panel, pretty Spartan. We get this like nearly 2-inch little LCD screen here. 2 buttons, and then the knob here with a button in the middle of it. You can navigate the menu system here from these front panel buttons, but it's easier with the remote control. It has a remote control. We'll get to that here in just a second. Okay, round back. Master power switch, power input. We have 4 types of digital input right here via cabling anyway. We get optical toast link, SPDIF optical toast link, SPDIF coaxial RCA here. Here's the USB input. Here's an I2S input. We also have a Bluetooth antenna connector right here. Analog audio outputs are pretty standard fare here with the dual 3-pin balanced XLR output and then the single-ended RCA stereo output here as well. These outputs can be set to be either fixed level, line level output or variable output, and you can control volume with this thing and use it as a preamp if you wish. All right, here's the remote control. Pretty basic, helps with menu navigation, power selection, input selection. Okay, and there's a mute button on there too. The battery just kind of sits in the back right here behind this little trapdoor thing. It's like one of those, I think it's CS or CR2038 batteries, something like that. Okay, that goes in there. It's a fairly simple remote control. It looks nice. It does still have this shiny black plastic here on there that does show fingerprints and all of that off, but it's a nicely functional remote. I had no issues with using it, and again, because this is a preamp, if you want to put this in a speaker system and then use this to sit across the room and control it that way, works just fine. Okay, so that's nice in there as well. All right, so the other ergonomic quirk that I want to talk about here that I just mentioned a moment ago, come back to that real quick here. The USB input, I believe it uses like an XMOS solution in here. Sonically, I really don't have issue with the USB implementation on this thing here. It sounds pretty good from its USB input. The issue that I have with it is that it will break the connection to the computer if you switch away from the USB connection. Okay, so if you have the USB input selected, and then you want to switch to another source device, it will break its connection with the computer. And that, of course, will pause the music and any of those things that you're trying to listen to. So why might that be an issue? Well, you could have this connected via USB to your computer and maybe be listening to music via Bluetooth from your phone for whatever reason. Okay, and then like you need to pause the music, okay, or you're listening on your phone and all of that, and then you like need to pause the Bluetooth, switch over to USB, do the thing there, okay, and then come back, break the connection between this and the computer via USB. Another way that shows up is if it's like, let's say that your computer also has like an optical output on it, and you use that for your system sounds. This is something that I used to do quite a bit here. Is I would want to be able to play sound from system sounds from my Windows PC, like through the web browser, like a YouTube video or something like that, okay? And then also plug in my DAC via USB so I could take advantage of exclusive modes and get all of the fun outputs that comes with that, like Bit Perfect, okay, DSD, MQA if you use that sort of thing from your software player via exclusive mode. And then like be able to just hit the pause button on my music playing app, switch inputs on my DAC, go to the web browser, watch a YouTube video real quick or listen to whatever it is I needed to listen to there, then be done with that, come back, and then just hit play on my music app and have the music restart. Because the USB connection breaks here when you switch away, like you have to restart the USB connection, re-engage the exclusive mode and all of that. So it's just kind of an ergonomic headache to do all of that. And in a device that is over $700, I would have liked to have seen the option to maintain the connection via USB when you switch away. Okay, I just think like the Bifrost 2, like Schiit with their Unison USB solution does that down to a much cheaper price point and all of that. So there are other products that you can do that with. So I would have liked to have seen that. So SML, next time around, give us a USB connection that doesn't break when we switch inputs. Okay. All right. So shall we get into the sound then? Absolutely. Let's get into the sound. Test gear. This was plugged into a wide variety of things on my system. So sources that would have been used for this. I did use the optical output from my Windows 10 PC motherboard into this thing's optical input. It was connected via USB to my Surface Pro 4 laptop for a stretch. I had it connected via either a coaxial or I2S to two different things at different times. One of them was my Singer SU2 digital-to-digital converter that is in turn connected to that same desktop PC I just mentioned ago via USB. And then the other would be the iFi Neo Stream, which acted as a Rune endpoint, and I am working on a review for the Neo Stream. Hope to have that out in the not-too-distant future as well. Okay, amplifiers. The balanced output would have at various times been connected to my Vioelectric HPA V281, my Lake People G111 Mark II, and an iFi Pro iCan Signature Edition. Where is that right now? Okay, it's down there. I don't have it hooked up currently, which I am working on a review for. The single-ended output would have been connected to, at various times, my KN-HA1A Mark II tube amplifier, the Erzatich Perfidus amplifier, which I have a review for very recently. We'll put a link down below for that as well. And it would have been connected to my desktop speakers, which currently consists of a Parasound ZoneAmp V3, single-ended connection, and Yamo C93 Mark II desktop bookshelf speakers. They're bookshelf speakers. Okay. All right, so with that, the sound, and this is where I'm going to come back to where I started this review, where it's just like, yes, we finally get an excellent measuring DAC that sounds really good. All right, so the traits, the sonic traits, at least the good sonic traits of excellent measuring DACs, meaning their cleanliness, their clarity, their black void sonic background. Okay, so in other words, they're just dead quiet, noise floor, and all of that. Those traits made it into this unit. Okay, and noticeably so. But it still sounds very musical and listenable to my ear from its balanced outputs. Still decent, but not nearly as strong from the single-ended outputs, and we'll unpack that more here in a bit. And then this is where I will again say that is a very common issue with DACs around this price point that are made balanced. They sound better from their balanced outputs than their single-ended outputs. So that's the biggest sonic complaint I'm going to have about this DAC here in a minute. Because from that balanced output, it's really good. And it's very, very competitive with the best DACs on the market at that price point. So we'll jump into those comparisons here as well in a little bit. So, yeah, the cleanliness, the clarity, the black void sonic background, but what we get from that is just a very neutral sounding frequency response. Maybe just a hair of perceived added emphasis in the upper mid-range lower treble, but not with a whole lot of bite or aggressiveness or harshness to it. So I did not really find that offensive to my ear in any way, and I'm a bit sensitive to that, or at least intolerant of forward upper mids, lower treble kind of region, where I get a lot of shoutiness and honkiness that comes through on headphones a lot. Okay, which did I mention headphones in test tracks? I may not have. Okay, things that were tried at some point. Susvara, HE1000 SE, the Urzatich Mania made it in there. Focal Utopia Original, Focal Radiance at times. Sennheiser HD6XX at times. Beyerdynamic DT880 600 ohms at times. I think that's enough. We'll run with that for now. Okay. Anyway, where I am often sensitive to shout and honk and all of that, the mid-range forwardness here I think helped with just a little bit of clarity, but really did not get into shouty or honky territory for me with headphones that aren't already there on their own. Okay, but then you get pretty good resolution with some good texturing to the sound. Room reverbs are well resolved and sound fairly natural and all of that. The sound stage does not come across as overly huge, nor is it tiny. It just kind of sounds like the size that it needs to be most of the time. There is pretty accurate imaging and separation laterally in it, and what really stands out to me for being such a well measuring DAC from one of those Chinese companies that has traditionally chased measurement excellence is it does depth pretty well and layering in this dimension, and that is a marked improvement over its measurement chasing competition out there that they are just not doing at this price point. So thumbs up to SMSL for figuring that out however they did it. Okay, another way that it really stands out to my ear is that it has nice macro dynamic impact to it as well. So for a while anyway, like the toppings and the SMSLs and the THXs of the world were just a little bit lacking in the dynamics. Okay, they wouldn't hit quite as hard. Then they figured out how to hit really hard, but then they just put everything up front where the decays and all of that just came across as either completely absent or just really overdamped and too short-lived, so it just didn't sound natural at all. Nice hard hit, it was just all up front. Nothing after that, none of the reverbs or the echoes or anything like that follows to make it sound natural. This one does a pretty good job with both things. It has pretty solid dynamics to it. It's not going to wow you, okay? It's not like the original Bifrost 2 where it's just like fun and punchy all the time, but it does not sound dynamically squelched to me in any way either. It just sounds fairly neutral and natural, like what it needs to be. Okay, so yeah, like on its own in a vacuum, well, not in a vacuum, you wouldn't hear any music, but just listening to this there on its own, I was just finally like, okay, they did it. Finally, an excellent measuring DAC that also from the balanced output can sound really, really good and very enjoyable and musical, and those kinds of things that just like subjectively, it's like, yes, I liked listening to this. I enjoyed reviewing it. I have not always enjoyed reviewing measurement chasers in the past, but I did genuinely enjoy this one. Okay, and that really surprised me, and I'm also just really happy to finally be able to say that. Okay, so then the drawback that I mentioned there is the single-ended output. It's not terrible from its single-ended output, but it just loses a little bit of its resolution, a little bit of its spatial coherence. I think those dynamics take a small step back and all of that from its single-ended output. Now, this is not an SMSL VMV D1se exclusive problem. Pretty much all of the balanced DACs anywhere near this price have that same issue. So if you have a tube amp that you like to use, okay, if this is going into, if you're using the balanced outputs for your headphone system and then the single-ended out for a speaker system and all of that, which is not rare either, just know that the single-ended performance, while not awful, is just noticeably behind the balanced output. Okay, so if you need, or if you just have a primarily single-ended system, you may not want to go this route for that reason either. Okay, comparisons. The big comparison that I will do here is between the Schiit Bifrost 2/64, which I have a review for, and we'll put a link to in the description below. And then, of course, I'll compare the two of these together here. All right. So if features are what you're after, if you need a lot of decoding options and a lot of connectivity options, the SMSL has the more fully fleshed out feature set, right? This has it can be used as a fully functional preamp. It's got 5 digital input options on it. It can do Bluetooth, okay? It can do DSD, MQA, right? All of that sort of thing. So this has the more complete feature set. I still think on balance, Schiit's Unison USB connection here on the Bifrost 2 is overall superior. Like, it does not break the USB connection like the VMVs does, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, so you can use it that way if you want, but I mean, this one is just more stripped down otherwise in its feature set. You get 3 digital inputs, USB, and then the 2 flavors of SPDIF in optical and coax. All right, it tops out its decoding at 24-bit, 192 kilohertz PCM. There's no DSD, there's no MQA, okay, anything like that. Now, comparing balanced output to balanced output sonically here, to me, the Bifrost 2, which I should also say is a $800 DAC, okay, $800 US, is just a hair superior in most of the technicalities here. It is just a hair more resolving. It is just a hair more coherent in its soundstage, with just a little bit sharper imaging and a little bit cleaner separation, okay, and that sort of thing. I think dynamics on these two are pretty similar, actually. The Bifrost 2 might have just a little bit more mid-bass punch to it than the SMSL does, but it's like not super far ahead. They have similar speed in terms of like what they can do on like snare drum snaps and like that sort of thing. I think that the Bifrost 2 is maybe a little bit edgier and slightly more aggressive in its treble, even though the SMSL is just a little bit brighter in its overall signature. These are still 2 very, very neutral overall sounding DACs, but just a hair bit of emphasis in the upper mids, lower treble here, compared to just a hair bit of emphasis in the warmth here, makes this one sound brighter. The SMSL sound a little bit brighter, but I think also a little bit more controlled in the treble than even the Bifrost is, and the Bifrost is still very good in that regard. So, okay, there's that. I think the biggest advantage that the Bifrost has sonically over the SMSL here, and what may be a deciding factor for a number of listeners out there, is that even though the Bifrost 2 does suffer from the drop in output, or drop in quality from its single-ended output versus its balanced output, just like just about every other balanced DAC at this price point, it does less so than the SMSL does. So if you have a primarily single-ended system, or you have a system where you need balanced output for one function, and you still need a high-quality single-ended output for another function, be they speakers or a tube amp or something like that, I think the Bifrost 2 is still the better option, and noticeably so. It is noticeably more resolving, more coherent in its spatial presentation. It becomes even more dynamic yet, okay, not just in the mid-bass, but elsewhere through the frequency spectrum. Again, comparing single-ended to single-ended, okay, the Bifrost 2 is just noticeably superior than the SMSL there. So that is something to keep in mind if you are shopping around here. Now, as far as other comparisons go, I have a bunch of mid-fi DACs coming through here right now. The Denafrips Aries 12th Anniversary Edition is in right now. It is hooked up to my system right now. I have not had much time with it, so I can't comment on that. I did just review the Musician Draco. I will leave for now my comparison between the Draco and the Bifrost in that review, which I will link to down below, to be kind of the comparison between that and here for now. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, if this lead comes through, that a Stoker's DAC 1421 will end up here in the near future as well. And assuming all of that happens, you'll get kind of a mid-fi DAC roundup video from me, okay, after that as well. Okay, so I will go ahead and leave comparisons there on the SMSL there for now. But we'll come back to the VMV D1se on its own and closing thoughts. So just wrapping up what I have said here is you get a DAC that measures excellently, and yet it still sounds very musical, listenable, and enjoyable subjectively. It's got a neutral presentation to it, very clean, clear, black void sonic background. Just a slight bit of upper mid and lower treble emphasis that might be just a hair above neutral there, but it's not really offensive to my ears either, and I'm kind of intolerant and sensitive in those areas. The feature set on this is excellent. Preamp decodes everything pretty much. Okay, I still recommend that you use its balanced outputs though, because it is just a much, much better performing DAC from its balanced output than it is from its single-ended output. Okay, but then again, finally we have one of these that is an excellent measuring DAC, but still sounds really good and enjoyable and listenable. And I am grateful that it finally exists and that it's at a somewhat reasonable price of $720 US. All right. I am Wave Theory. This has been my review of the SMSL VMV D1se digital to analog converter. Please like this video if you haven't yet. Leave a comment. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. Check out my PayPal. Check out my Patreon. And do all of those things that you do to support YouTube channel. So as always, thanks for watching and enjoy the music.